This is Grandma. As Dad and I walk up the stairs into the kitchen, we can hear her rise from her chair in the living room. I imagine she was probably enjoying one of her favorite games, those being Mahjong or Solitaire. As I see her come around the corner, I see her aged, wrinkly, but somehow youthful face stretch into a wide smile as she sees us standing and waiting for her. Her cool house has already done us a good welcome, the cool air relieving us from the hot summer air outside. Around her, I can see the familiar pots boiling on the stove and the small, round dining table prepared and arranged for two guests and herself. Her food would be more or less used to entice us to stay longer, and I'll be honest, I don't mind one bit. The delicious smell of authentic homemade chicken paprika chills my nostrils, further adding to the good mood her house projects on me. As she walks towards me, I can hear the old wooden floor bending and creaking beneath her feet. She says, "Oh, Jimmy, how nice of you to come by." This is the name she has always called my dad, and I sometimes do just to tease him. Memories like this make me thankful for the relationship I had with my grandma. To this day, or with grandma. To this day, I carry with me the many lessons that she taught me, and I will for the rest of my life. Grandma is one of the most compassionate and loving people I ever knew. She, along with the rest of Dad's side of the family, show the rich Hungarian tradition throughout all of us. But it is most affluent through her. She had a very youthful wit about her despite her very old age of 87. Her warm smile will always glowed when she got to see me and Dad. She wore almost comically largely lensed glasses, but they didn't always get the job done. I can remember her saying, Evan, honey, what does that say?" Of course, I would read out what it said only to hear her response, "Oh, I knew that already." Her endless wit never ceased, and it never grew old. It only added to her warm nature. Grandma also fit the role of the family matriarch very well. She had an astounding 9 children, and they all think very dearly of her. 7 of these children were girls, and have all grown into the aunts that I know today. All of them seem to have different traits of Grandma within them. Nancy with her wit, Jean with her compassion, the list goes on. Grandma also had a large amount of respect from people not within the immediate family. At any large gathering, everyone knew when she was arriving. Her old Ford Windstar van took on almost the appearance of a limousine whenever she arrived in any of these gatherings. Once she had settled down to the event, she made her way around greeting and conversing with every single person there, regardless of who they were. I remember seeing her almost come down a line of sorts with her short, plump body shuffling from one by one until she would reach me. We would usually end up getting lost in conversation for what felt like hours. After that, she kept making her rounds, humming one of her favorite tunes from Shirley Temple. She sang, "What makes life the sweetest, the bestest, and completest? Not a big doll house or Mickey Mouse, but the right somebody to love." One of Dad's favorite memories of Grandma is one that I can't remember. Dad said, "I will never forget the first time that I had her hold you. Her face was probably the happiest I had ever seen it. I'll never forget that." Grandma and I were also always very close compared to my other grandchildren and cousins. Perhaps that bond goes back farther than I ever realized. Grandma was also one of the wisest people I ever knew. She taught me the many lessons that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Grandma, along with the rest of the family, are very open Christians and Catholics. She attended a church of the latter option, and I journeyed with her for Mass for a few times. And it was very different from my sort of Sunday school that I would usually go to. Though I was young, she tried to incorporate many of the old and traditional things of Catholicism to me, even giving me my own rosary. I still have it, but I am just now truly beginning to understand what it really means. Her teachings about Christ and what it means to be his follower are still very profound to me. One of the things she would preach to me would be to treat others with respect and give yourself the same. She would say, "Now, you wouldn't treat me like that, so why do it to someone else?" Her virtues were what she lived by. Her deep involvement in the church is what inspires me to keep going and immerse myself into it. Grandma also taught me discipline, but I learned it through my father. Dad said after a few times misbehaving in that house, you either never did it again or found ways to not get caught. She made sure I knew and followed the rules, and she did it the old school way. Perhaps this would be frowned upon these days, but it taught me the old school way of learning discipline and obedience very well, maybe even better than my own parents did towards me. I have many memories of my grandma too. Most of them take place within her house. Towards the year of her death, she left the house less and less. I believe this was because of her husband and my grandpa passing away the year before. Grandpa was a World War II veteran who lived with the after effects of a stroke. Though he was very much less useful and coherent than Grandma, their love for each other never seemed to fade, even after he died. The favorite memory I have of Grandma was on the 55th anniversary of their wedding. Grandma was the happiest I'd ever seen her. The whole family threw a huge celebration for them. During a part of the celebration, Grandma talked about her love for Grandpa. Her eyes filled with tears, and at that moment I realized that they loved each other more than any other relationship I had ever seen. Dad said this was one of the happiest moments I'd ever seen from Mom. Dad, too. It makes me grateful that I have you to share these moments with, son. The vision of seeing them hugging and lounging together with all their children posing for a photo will always be engraved in my mind. Despite all the memories I have with Grandma, none of them are more profound to me than the night she died. One day, Dad called me and said, "Evan, Grandma fell again. It's much worse than last time." Immediately, I wanted to brush hearing this news off. She had fallen before and always made a swift recovery. However, to him telling me this one is different arouses some concern with me. This time, Grandma fell and cut her leg on a wooden fence post in the backyard of her home. Somehow the cut infected her with some sort of infectious disease that usually can be treated and recovered from without hospitalization. Grandma's advanced age and a weak immune system made this a little more of an issue. A day later, Dad called me again. He said, "Son, I want you to know that this may be the last time you get to see your grandma. The disease that had plagued and ravaged her body overnight. Her lungs were filling with infected fluid and it was attacking her heart's valves. The last thing Dad told me on the phone was that this is possibly the last time I'd see her alive." Once we arrived at the hospital, we walked quickly into her room. To my surprise, the room was completely packed with family members. Everyone made an appearance. Grandma at that time was sleeping, so for a while my dad and I talked about all the memories we had with Grandma just to occupy some time. At this point I could see the sadness and grief in Dad's face. I realized he knew Grandma was going to die. Dad is a heart doctor at Robinson Memorial Hospital and has dealt with countless heart conditions, diseases, and deaths. Dad has seen more people die than he is probably willing to tell me. He always told me stories, but he always seemed very tough. He showed little emotion over deaths he has told me about, but this time it was very different. I can see his shell of toughness cracking through the look on his face. It takes all of my will to not cry along with him. Instead, I try my best to comfort him. Moments later, Grandma wakes up. She slowly emerges from her slumber, and the family members all start taking turns talking with Grandma about her bedside. After Uncle Phil, I stepped up to the bed and put my hand on Grandma's shoulder. I say hello, and she instantly recognized. She said, "Oh, hi, Evan. I'm glad you came to see me here, honey." Her now not-so-youthful face was stretched into that wide smile I always loved. She tells me she feels good, and we exchange a few words after that. Soon she begins to fall in and out of sleep. The last time she wakes up, she calls to my dad. He sits at the bedside holding her hand. For the first time since being admitted to the hospital, Grandma sits up under her own power. Staring at the ceiling, she has perhaps the happiest face I had ever seen on anyone in my life. She talks to Dad, but loud enough for all of us to hear. She was talking about how she can see heaven. Grandma describes beautiful golden roads, shining skies, and indescribably beautiful places. Then she tells us that she can see Grandpa calling to her to come join him. She said, "Oh, Jimmy, I can see your dad. He's waving to me." At this point, almost all of the family began to cry. I didn't. I felt no need to. My mind was struggling to comprehend everything that she had just said, and then it hits me like a brick wall. I realized everything that Grandma had told me about God and staying close to the church was true. This experience was truly amazing. The rest of the family was speechless. We all knew that she was telling the truth. Grandma was completely at peace. In her last hours, she seemed the happiest I'd ever seen her. No, almost 2 years after Grandma's passing, her house is still not the same. A cousin of mine purchased the house, and the atmosphere there since has not been the same. I no longer walk in and get to hear her voice. I don't get the same warm welcome of cooking food, seeing her smile, and giving her a big hug. Grandma, sharing our memories together to the outside world has been an experience I hope you would appreciate. The lessons you told me about life will be things that I carry with me for the rest of my life, and I will never forget all the times I came with you to church. I promise to go to church all of my life and learn its ways, following in your footsteps. Your house is just not the same without you. Recently, I decided to start playing football again. Even though you never got to see me play in any games, I know now that you are always there, even though I can't see you. I wish you were still here so we could make more memories with each other, but I know that you are happy and living an amazing next life with Grandpa. One day I will be there with you, and I will get to see your smile once more.